All right, guys, welcome back to the Run It Back podcast. I am your host. I am Joy, and my co-host is Wesley Ibarra. Uh,
Hey, Run It Back Nation, how are we doing this week? Ready to talk another round of F1 and boxing with you, Joy.
Whew. How's it been, man?
I'm good. It's been a hectic week, but when you finally have that chance to wind down and talk about two of the biggest sports that you like with someone that can talk those sports with you and also appreciates you as a man overall, that's just
Yeah,
what makes me happy, calms me down.
decent. Yeah, man, I'm enjoying these podcasts, and yeah, I mean, my week it was okay. It started off with a Bears loss, so yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, cool. So the Turkish Grand Prix. How did you? What is your initial reactions for the Turkish Grand Prix?
My God, that is my reaction. Because it was completely wet. I mean, granted, the conditions are crap all
Yeah, yeah,
weekend.
absolutely.
I was really worried about uh, Lewis's title chances because I had him as one of my drivers to watch that week, and more on that later in the podcast, folks. But you know, and we didn't get to see all the action, such as like the flat out turn eight. But after everything that subsided, I knew what happened to Stroll was going to happen to Stroll, and I knew Lewis was going to pull it off, but I didn't think he'd pull off another masterclass. And yeah, I ever since we've had this podcast, Joy, I think he's had two perfect drives in a row.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree. I think the conditions of the Turkish Grand Prix were horrible. Well, with that being said, I did enjoy it a lot. I think F1 had a lot more to offer when teams didn't know what was going to happen. Right. This was the week where it seemed like Mercedes wasn't at the pace in all practice and all of qualifying, and so it was exciting. I actually thought that there wasn't going to be a Mercedes on the podium this week, and the week that Lewis was going to still clinch the title, and so like yeah, it was kind of weird. I do agree also. Like I don't think Stroll was going to hold on to that lead. He did surprise me though. He pulled out like a 20-second lead in the beginning, but I knew that midway through the race he was gonna somehow I knew like he wasn't gonna win this race. So yeah. So yeah. Let's start off with the Bulls and the Bears. So Wes, your Bulls and Bears. Let's start off with your Bulls, right? You mentioned you picked Lewis, Verstappen, and Leclerc.
That is correct, Joy. And by my standards, I feel like I had a decent return on my Bulls. So again, for all my traders out there, I hope that's some words of encouragement. But yes, Lewis was my first Bull, of course. Little weary of the qualifying practices and his start, especially that error where he went wide on turn nine, I believe it was.
Yep.
But again, he pulled off that masterclass of a drive. And at the end of the day, he took advantage of a blunder, put a masterclass of a 20-second plus lead, and he won that seventh world title in dramatic fashion, in the rain, at a hard track, and with all kinds of things going against him and his own team. My gosh. Now, with Max, I understand the spins, the weather, the tire changes, that didn't go into his favor, let alone anyone else's. But yeah, I wanted him to kind of dominate that podium place or, you know, P4 area. But obviously that didn't happen. So a little disappointed there. But I know that Max is still one of the best out there and is still my guy for Drive the Year. Charles Leclerc, him and his teammate raced like hell. Literally, they were red hot in the red car. And that's a little joke from my comments the other week. But yeah, Leclerc had a chance to, I think it was take second, but I think he locked up and went wide towards the end, right?
Right.
But yeah, either way, he had a one hell of a drive, and yeah, I was pretty happy with Charles' performance. Again, another candidate for driver of the year, even though I think Max is a little bit better this season. But overall, I'm happy with my Bulls.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of give a little bit of my thoughts on Lewis and Leclerc. I'll say a lot more on Verstappen because I also picked him for my Bulls. But yeah, Lewis and Leclerc. Lewis, obviously, like it surprised me that he only did one stop, right? I think,
Hmm.
yeah, he only did one stop, and he made the tires last like 30 laps towards the end, which is crazy because once you look at his tires at the end of the race, they were just perfect slick, right? Yeah, we were talking in pre-pod that this is when Lewis is at his best, and it looked like he literally was driving like normal people tires, like it's insane. And then Leclerc, yeah, he was incredible. I don't, I'm not gonna nitpick here and say that he made a huge mistake. I think, of course, he did make a huge mistake, but at the end of the day, it's P4. He could have been P3, and maybe even P2 if he made that move stick. But yeah, definitely a much deserved position for Leclerc. And yeah, so let's move on to your Bears. You had Sainz, Albon, and Vettel.
That is correct. And I would like to say if I was a trader and I said to these people that these stocks were going to go down, I would be fired almost immediately, Joy. So Signs. I think he was P4, P5. Correct me, Joy.
Sainz is, you mean P4, P5? Like
Yeah. His finishing position.
Sainz was P5.
P5. Okay.
Yes.
I expected him to finish a lot lower because the McLarens suck in cold weather and it was a
Yeah.
cold and wet race. Hell, was I ever wrong? And Sainz did one hell of a drive too. At one point, it looked like he was going to be somewhere in that fight. But hey, he put it
Yeah.
in a pretty good position, an exceeding expectation position. And of course, when you're Ferrari, you're watching your future. And that should be a lot of encouragement moving forward. Alex Albon, this one I think I got right. Yeah, of course he was in a position for a win, and I think his performance probably made it harder for Red Bull to decide whether they want to keep him around or not. But he made mistakes that cost him that, I guess, that FU moment, if you know what I mean. That like, hey, I'm still capable. I still deserve to be the second driver here. But despite those mistakes, or despite that early success, those mistakes cost him in the end, which is I think is makes it appropriate to leave him there in the Bears and got it right. And my last one is Sebastian Vettel. Oh my God, I don't want to talk about this any further because never have I been so wrong in my life
Yeah.
about Sebastian Vettel. He showed that he still got it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that set Formula One Twitter or Formula One Internet ablaze. That maybe Mattia is the problem, and we'll get to talk about Mattia later. But that was a classic Vettel performance. Of course, he was in his name was in the hat for the ring or for the win. I mean, but one hell of a drive from him, and whether that can be a bit of a hot stretch towards the end of the season, that has yet to be seen. But it's pretty encouraging, again, from a new team standpoint for Aston Martin, that, hey, if we can get this Sebastian Vettel for next year, I think we're going to be in good shape. And that's what Stroll should be thinking right now.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, and I will admit I have been quite hard on Vettel, but that's only because I have very high standards for Vettel. I think everyone should. He's a four-time world champion. I think you know he should have enough experience to be able to challenge at least Leclerc in some of these positions that Leclerc is getting in these races. So yeah, I also agree that I think Aston Martin is really smiling their face, has a huge smile on their face. Like, yeah, we're getting that battle next year. So, but
Hopefully.
but then again, Perez did well. He did incredible in this
Oh, for
race. Let's
sure.
not. I mean, we didn't list him in any of our Bulls or Bears, but I think he definitely deserves a lot more accolades than we're giving him, than we're not giving him. So yeah,
For sure.
let's move on to my Bulls and my Bears. So my Bulls were Sainz, Verstappen, and Russell. Okay, I was completely correct about Sainz. Right, this is pretty much my losing column. right? My bulls. So Signs, I knew that somehow he was gonna sneak into a really good position. Um, I really wanted Signs to really just I mean, I'm not disappointed with P5, but I actually thought that he was gonna get a podium in this race. That's really just what happens when there's a crazy race. Signs manages to kind of sneak up on everyone and get this incredible result. Part of it is because I want McLaren to get that P3 in the constructors, but that's just me as a fan, and I think, but I think Sainz still deserves a lot of the credit that he's getting right now. I will say I did not see him a lot throughout the race. He's always been kind of complaining that the best battles in F1 this year or last year have been in the midfield, and they're not showing it. So I think Sainz had a decent race. Like he didn't really go wheel to wheel with anyone, but I think he deserves a P5. Albon, I don't know. Verstappen. Verstappen is definitely a big disappointment. I put him as my bulls. I thought he was gonna win the race. He should have. He was pretty much faster than everyone in practice and in qualifying. At one point, he was putting out 5 seconds ahead of everyone. So for me, I didn't think it was gonna happen. I didn't think like P at Q3 Verstappen is gonna be 5 seconds ahead. That would be insane. That would just be overpowered. But yeah, in the race, he kind of struggled. He made a lot of mistakes, and there was one spin where he tried to overtake Sergio, but it was a mistake that you could say he made. It was a little bit more like he was impatient, and the other spin that he did was after he was trying to react to Kimi Räikkönen's spin, trying to get out of the way. The power just slipped from under him and got caught. So yeah. I also picked Russell. Um, Russell was being pretty much bullied by Lando Norris. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Russell didn't do well. We knew that he was gonna be in the back of the grid with those engine penalties after his big crash. But I thought he was gonna show how good he was in this race. Because it's like it's not predictable. It's unpredictable, these conditions, and so I thought he was gonna take advantage of it a little bit more. Now he finished P16 for a car that's supposed to be finishing last, but still that's only like 3 positions. I expected a little bit more from Russell. So yeah. And
No.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Great. Yeah. No. I mean, it's kind of hard, right, to follow a back marker around for as good as Russell's been this year, right? And neither Williams, quite frankly, didn't do anything special.
Yeah.
During the race, so it's totally understandable. Of course,
I believe Latifi punted Grosjean out of the track, but
and yeah, which was bad, but
yeah.
I understand. In a way, Russell's kind of like a volatile stock, right? Because like when he performs well, it's like big reward, and then when he doesn't, it's kind of like, oh god. But yeah, with Verstappen, it was just, I think it's an outlier. I think he'll bounce back in Bahrain, and with Sainz, I'm excited to see what he can do in Bahrain as well. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself with Carlos and Max. Hence why I don't have too many comments there. But yeah, with George, I barely saw him at any point.
Yeah, and so moving on to my Bears, I picked my Bears as Ricardo, Albon, and Grosjean. Now, I'm pretty sure, I actually consider this a complete win column. Now, Ricardo, he did score on the points on a Renault, but that Renault should be the 3rd fastest car. I think it should be the 3rd fastest car
I don't know
on the
about
grid.
that, but
Well,
okay.
yeah, I think it should. With the momentum that they've been having, it should be. It looks like it, but that's probably just because of Ricardo. But yeah, P10, 1 point doesn't really help their cause in getting the P3 in constructions. I mean constructors. But yeah, Ricardo had an incredible start. I don't know if you saw this, but like he was pretty much at P4, I think, in the start. Ocon could have had P3, but he got spun in the first turn. Uh, but yeah, not really his fault. It was just a racing incident. So, but yeah, Albon, a lot of people say that this is a really good result for Albon. I don't think so. He did look like he had a lot of pace in the race, but like you said, he did have an opportunity to win the race. He was one of those guys that we thought, oh, if Albon can really come alive here, he could win the race. He could have his first win. But yeah, I think Albon only looks good because Verstappen didn't look great. And even then, Verstappen was able to finish ahead of him. And so yeah, I thought when Verstappen spun, I was like, okay, this is Albon's time because he was right there. He was really literally almost behind Verstappen when Verstappen spun. So yeah, disappointing. I don't know how Red Bull sees it. I don't know how Red Bull kind of views this race. But if it were me, I wouldn't. If I was Albon, I'm not patting myself on the back, saying good job. There's still a lot of work to do. A win just pretty much slipped away when the Red Bulls looked like they were the fastest car on the weekend. So yeah, and Grosjean, he was one of those cars or racers or drivers that we didn't really see throughout the entire race. I only saw him literally when he made contact with Latifi, and then he spun it after making contact with Latifi because he had damage. That's pretty much it. I actually thought that at one point his partner, Kevin Magnussen, I think, retired. I thought he was going to bring out a safety car, but it wasn't. It was just a VSC. And when Grosjean spun, I thought they were going to give him a VSC because, or at least a safety car because there was some debris, I think, but it was off track. So yeah, unfortunate, but yeah, I think every single one of these guys, I think I swept. I mean, I would consider that a sweep.
Yeah, on my scoring philosophy or system, whatever, what have you. Yeah, I think you did go 3 for 3. So kudos to you for getting the perfect on Bears. Yeah, Albon, I don't want to talk about too much because I already mentioned in my part of the segment, right?
Yeah.
But Ricardo, yeah, 1 point, and yes, I did see that. Of course, that start was really interesting because Verstappen was literally like walking. But yeah, no, Ricardo got a really good start. So did Hamilton, by the way. Just saying.
Yeah, he
But yeah, to have all of that and only get 1 point out of it, that is a little underwhelming, especially when you're in a tight fight with Racing Point and McLaren, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, a little bit disappointed there, and I hope he bounces back in Bahrain, which he should because he had the DNF I think last season there. So yeah, we need to see him cross the line next week. Grosjean, that is such a safe pick, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
that's not a bad thing. I think everyone's been picking on Grosjean this year, and yeah, something about Haas, man. That I don't know if that spin would have warranted a safety car of any kind, but with Magnussen, that kind of looked like Australia 2018 all over again. That man, those tire mechanics, dude. I don't know what's up with them. I mean, granted, they probably change his tire better than us, but still.
Yeah. But
like it happened again.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, congrats on the sweep. I'm excited to see who we put out there for Bahrain.
Yeah.
And yeah, no. Either way, it was a really interesting race to watch, and a lot of results of unexpectedness. And yeah, that's the beauty of Formula One.
Yeah, I literally can't wait for this episode of Drive to Survive, this upcoming break. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting. hopefully they don't just follow Haas, because I feel like Haas is just gonna be just disappointing to watch, and so yeah. But yeah, let's move on to the man of the hour. Um, Probably the man of the hour for the last 6 years. Um, Lewis Hamilton, right?
Yes, sir.
So
LH, baby.
Lewis Hamilton clinched a title this week in the Turkish Grand Prix. Um, it's crazy because this was the race where he spun, went to in Formula. What was it called?
It was
Formula
GP
GP2.
through two.
GP2.
Yeah,
Yeah. So in
yeah.
GP2, which is pretty much Formula Two, right now, in GP2, um, I forgot where he started. I think he started pole, right, and then he spun, went to 19th, and then throughout the entire race just started overtaking people, finished second, and got the championship at that very race. Now, I mean, it's pretty similar here, right? Like he didn't have the best grid position. I think he had P5. He didn't spin, but man, like never in like if you asked me the night before, I didn't think he was gonna win this race. I just didn't think like he was comfortable. Just racing out there in the Turkish Grand Prix. I just didn't think he was comfortable, especially when it was wet. So yeah, it was very entertaining.
No, yeah, and like I alluded to earlier in the Bulls and Bears segment, like a lot of unpredictiveness, and we just saw a masterclass from Lewis,
Yeah,
and yeah, they brought that up, the GP2 recovery drive, and they compared it to this, and of course, just watching it and seeing it all unfold, it's like it's a surreal moment, right? Because that is our thing of greatness as a Formula One fans, because especially as American Formula One fans,
right.
because we get overshadowed with we're not overshadowed, but we've seen the, like, for example, for our basketball viewers, the Warriors, right? For our anybody that watches the NFL, the New England Patriots, um, that run of dominance, right?
Yeah,
And then you don't see that in Formula One here in the United States, because we're not, or most Americans are not aware of it. But for us to take the time and actually watch it and see how great Lewis actually has been for the past 7 years, well, even though we've been watching Formula One a little bit less than that, man, it's awesome to be alive for this moment.
well, yeah. Yeah. I wanted to kind of go over like some of these questions that we set up for ourselves. Like, what does like Lewis Hamilton mean to us? And I guess I'll start. I started watching Formula One. I said this in the previous podcast in episode two. Pretty much the very first race I ever watched was in 2015 Austin, um, in the U.S. Grand Prix. But yeah, like the very first race I've ever watched was him winning because off of a Nico Rosberg mistake. And pretty much, if you ever start watching in this pretty much in this decade, most likely you're gonna probably watch Lewis Hamilton win, right? Like in his like if you're the very first race that you watch was in this decade, most likely he won the race that the very first time you watched. But yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, Hamilton to me, I mean he's the goat, right? He is the Michael Schumacher of this era, and so when people have this debate between Michael versus Lewis, I mean I could only really stand for Lewis, um, because I've witnessed the man's greatness. I've seen him do great things, and I think I think a lot of people don't really give him enough credit. It's a lot harder to stay on top than it is to be on top for 1 year and then kind of lose it the next year. So I don't know. 6 times is huge. I do think that the Mercedes had a huge part of it, but I mean we got to keep in mind here he didn't win every single championship in every single year, right? He was challenged because he was challenged by Nico Rosberg. I've always thought that Hamilton wasn't afraid of competition. If you look at his teammates, he's had Jenson Button, he's had Fernando Alonso, um, and he's had Nico Rosberg. These guys were all champions, and so I was never afraid that, and I don't think he was ever afraid of losing to an opponent because he was just that confident that he was gonna win.
Yeah, no. For me, what does he mean to me? Or yeah, what does he mean to me? He's on my Mount Rushmore of greatest athletes to ever walk the earth, right? So he's up there with Michael Jordan and Manny Pacquiao, if you ask me, when it comes to my Mount Rushmore of athletes. Of course, I'm missing one athlete. I guess I could put Tiger Woods in there, but yeah, to be able to see that run of dominance, 7 titles, that is unheard of,
Yeah.
right? Like Michael Jordan won 6. Steph Curry won, I believe it's 3. Tom Brady has 6. But 7? 7? That is a lot.
Not
I
even
mean,
Michael Schumacher.
yeah, and then yeah, Schumacher has
He has
7 as well.
7, but he had a run of 6. Yeah, he had a run of 6, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, what I'm trying to say is that like, what it means to me is that he he is part of that greatness in my era of watching sports, right? And I don't know if I'll ever see a driver or an athlete like that again. So that's what Lewis means to me. And even though I've been watching Formula One in spots, and like I mentioned earlier, back in the early 2010s, I heard of Lewis, but I didn't think that name would be relevant in my life again. Well, guess what? It is. And now he's in a special place in my idea of sports superstars.
Yeah, yeah, that's very well articulated, Wes. I do agree. He is definitely one of the best athletes out there. Very, underrated. Um, these F1 drivers are athletes. They pretty much lose about 10 pounds of weight every single race, and that's how much stress they put their body in. And so yeah. Let's move on to the other question. What does he mean to Formula One? I think he wasn't ever the first black Formula One driver to there was I forgot his name, but he tested a Formula One driver in Formula One car. I believe he also drove one season. He wasn't very successful, but that was the start of breaking the boundaries. But right now, what we're witnessing in Lewis is that he, like I said, he is the greatest of all time in my opinion, and he does share a lot of his life through his social media, right? you know Back then, Lewis was this guy who pretty much lived a fast lifestyle. um I don't know if there was any kind of lifestyle that I would compare him to from other Formula One legends. Probably the closest would be Hunt, James Hunt, the way he lived his lifestyle. That's pretty much what Lewis did, right? Like he would show up on practice on Friday, or Friday and Saturday. But just 2 days before that, he was probably like in a fashion show halfway across the world. And yeah, that's pretty much how much he lived his life back then. Now, he did make a promise that it was going to be different. In the upcoming years, he's vegan. He's more aware. He's more environmentally aware than he ever was. And yeah, like there's a lot of changes that I've seen from him like recently, but also bringing this awareness of diversity in Formula One. I've always thought that there was a lack of diversity in Formula One, especially in the engineering side. I've always wanted to see a little bit more engineers of color and of different backgrounds. And so yeah, I think that's what he means to F1, right? He's this great opportunity for everyone to enjoy Formula One. And I guess Formula One for so long has been so inaccessible. It's been viewed as this kind of rich sport, that only the rich watch and only the rich participate. And in some cases, it's still true to this very day. But Lewis, I think, kind of brought this new era of drivers where they're a little bit more accessible. Not accessible, but they're more, um, what do you call it? Not relevant, but you could, like you could communicate with them. Like you could relate to them is what I'm trying to say. Um, and so Lewis didn't grow up from uh, the riches of families. And Formula One drivers do have this history of coming from rich families, and so I think that's what he means to Formula One. He is this huge change in Formula One, and I think he wants to be in the middle of this incredible change that and this incredible shift that we're seeing in Formula One right now. And I think he's part of that. He's a huge part of it, and he wants to be a huge part of it. And I don't think he gives himself enough credit for it.
Well, Joy, before I get into my spiel, I do want to fact check you a little bit. Willie T. Ribbs tested for Brabham, but did not actually participate.
Okay.
So wanted to put that out there. So by default, Lewis is the first black man to race in Formula One. Even Willie T. Ribbs himself says that. So yeah, no, but anyway, speaking of Willie T. Ribbs, if anyone's interested, watch the documentary Uppity on Netflix. So yeah, and he's also been on Beyond the Grid, and he loves Lewis. But anyway, what does he mean to F1? I think to me, if LeBron is the NBA, if Tom Brady is the NFL, if Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy is the PGA, then Lewis Hamilton's Formula One. And I'll tell you why. He's a global icon. Just about anywhere in the world, you will find his image somewhere. Whether it's in a Tommy Hilfiger store, whether it's on a Puma ad, or even Monster Energy, if you will. He's there. And the thing is, he also tops Forbes lists on highest earning and influential people. And, for a Formula One driver, a guy that's capable of withstanding a car that not many people can drive, that can be globally recognized on more than one category, he represents the sport very well. And like you alluded to, Joy, he is competing in a sport that society would say he doesn't belong in. But guess what? He does. And it's cool to see him, especially as a middle-class person myself, get to see someone actually make it out and succeed. And you also gotta love his activism. Yes, he has that lifestyle of attending fashion shows or parties or whatever it may be, and then show up on race weekend not too long from being there. But at the same time, he also has a platform to stand up for what's right in this world. And he's showing his own sport that they need to catch up, much like the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So to me, without him, F1 would be a lot different, and I can't say it would be any good than it is right now. So for me, Lewis is F1.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wes. By the way, for fact checking me for William Theodore Ribbs. I remember him now that you said his name. But yeah, he was the very first one to test drive, but Lewis is the very first one to compete. And so yeah, like pretty much when I see Lewis, I think of him in his McLaren days. I don't really, because I don't know. I guess I like the McLaren a little bit better. Just the way it looked, that silver, that chromed out McLaren. And so when people think about, like, I guess this is a good segue for like, is he the greatest of all time? Yes, in my opinion, I've already shared that. But for me, I think the image that will always stick to me is him in that McLaren in that yellow helmet, Um, when he beat when he won the championship in Interlagos, that to me was Lewis. That was like the birth of Lewis, and so that's the one like where I'm gonna remember him the most. Um, and so I guess it's the same thing with Ayrton Senna. A lot of people say they'll probably remember Ayrton from driving his McLaren. But I remember him from his Lotus. I guess aesthetically for me they just look a little bit better. But yeah, in the terms of the greatest of all time, yes, yeah, I think he is the greatest of all time. Um, I could be a little bit more biased. I could be a little bit biased because I see him. I watch him pretty much almost every Sunday. But I mean, I can only judge what I can see. So, but yeah, hopefully I have the time to watch over Senna's races, Schumacher's races, and even Fangio's races. So, yeah. So yeah, I think I've already answered this one.
Is he the greatest of all time? I would argue that Lewis is the greatest of his generation,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna pit him against a Sterling Moss or a Fangio or a Schumacher or a Senna,
Yeah.
Prost, Clark. I'm not gonna compare him to that. What I will do though, from a management lens, so this is Wes, the aspiring sports management professional, coming in now, making a one-off appearance here, or at least his quick sub in, not a one-off. But um, I'm willing to give another driver, for as long as I'm still alive, a chance. Okay, whether that is George Russell, whether that is Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, or even some driver that I do not know of that is out there putting in his and her time to become the greatest. But until that driver comes, right now, Lewis is the man to beat. But I'm
Yeah.
not ready to put him there as the greatest of all time because I
Okay.
know I have a lot of Formula One left to watch moving
Okay.
forward. I'm not willing to go back.
Okay.
So that's my stance there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I mean, I think even Schumacher, right? In an interview, he stated that records are meant to be broken. He wasn't scared about anyone breaking his records, and at that time, they name dropped Lewis Hamilton being this successor um, to breaking all of his records, and Michael Schumacher didn't really mind. He thought that records were meant to be broken, and if you ask me, I think there will be a driver that breaks Hamilton's record. I don't know if that's going to be anytime soon. Uh, with the new direction that Formula One is going, it seems as though it's going to be more of a level playing field. But that'll be, I think, then the accomplishment of breaking Lewis's records in that level playing field is even greater. So, yeah, I can't wait to see it. If it holds in the future, I can't wait to see it. But yeah, so I guess what now, right? For Lewis, he's pretty much gotten all the records. I do believe he will stay for one more season. I do think he is gonna get that eighth championship. I'm pretty sure he's gonna finish with over 100 wins, maybe like 103, 104. I do predict that Red Bull is gonna give him much more of a challenge next season, but I don't think it's gonna be enough. So yeah, I do think that this is. I'm not gonna say this is it, but like Hamilton, he has a lot of other priorities aside from just Formula One. Um, I don't know if he's ever gonna be completely attached to Formula One when he leaves. Um, but that'd be cool to see. I do think he has a lot more projects in mind other than driving when he retires. So, I mean, but that just adds to his greatness, right? He's talented, and there's a lot more things that he's interested in, and so for me, it's a lot more interesting to read about him that way. Whereas he was the driver, he's a driver his entire life, and he'll stay a driver after he retires. So yeah, I think Hamilton is gonna keep moving. I think he's gonna win one more, and yeah, I think he's just gonna pretty much set the new bar.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay.
For me, I would love to see him become an ageless wonder. But realistically speaking, yeah, I would say maybe one more season. And shoot, I wouldn't be mad if he decided to say, that's it. I'll just go
Yeah.
straight to managing my Formula or Extreme E team, or, enhance my Tommy Hilfiger and Puma lines. Whatever it is, whatever projects, become a rapper. We could use a XNDA EP right around now. If you know what I'm saying. But yeah, Lewis has accomplished so much. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone at this point.
Yeah.
Really, I feel like this might come in as a very hot take, but it feels like Formula One needs him, but he doesn't need Formula One,
Oh.
right? It's kind of like an unrequited thing at this point. Now,
that is
of course,
pretty hot. That is a pretty hot take.
Of course, he's on record saying, I feel like I can go another 3 more years, but you know, that's always that's called media training, everyone. For those that didn't know, but yeah, we'll see. I would love to see him keep winning, but of course, at some point, that's gonna end.
That's gonna end. Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be mad if it was right now. If he just said, you know what, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Why don't I? And it's not, at this point, it's not common, or uncommon rather, to see athletes just step away and do whatever they at the very top and do what they want to do. Like, for one example I can really think of is in the WNBA. So I hope we have listeners that watch women's basketball. Maya Moore was arguably the best player in the WNBA. When she stopped playing, which was not too long ago. She wanted to focus more on activism and, prison reform to change the system, the prison system, right? And she managed to get a guy who was wrongly convicted out of jail. So with Lewis, he wants to promote more human rights, equality for Black people, and have people, ethnic minorities, be more involved in STEM. So that takes a lot of time, right?
Right.
And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he just decided, you know what, I would rather do this than drive the Mercedes around. So, but at the same time, I want to still see him succeed. It's a bit of a gray area, if you ask me. But that's my hot take too. That yeah, I feel like it's starting to become a point where Formula One needs him, but he doesn't need Formula One.
Okay, I'm pretty sure there's some fans out there that would say, if Hamilton left, then Formula One would grow. I'm pretty sure there would be some fans that would argue that. So yeah, that's pretty hot take. We could probably.
Well, my hit back to that will be then. Well, that growth doesn't necessarily happen as exponentially without Lewis, though.
Yeah.
Just
absolutely. And yeah, this could be another topic for different running back episode. So yeah, definitely. Lewis is. We're gonna have a special kind of segment on Lewis a little bit more towards the end of the season. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty much dedicated to Lewis, because he is that important to Formula One, I think. So yeah, let's go to the F1 news and rumors. There was this we're calling this segment hot lap segment, right? So it's the hot laps. We're gonna give you F1 news pretty quick. By the way, there wasn't a lot of rumors swirling around in the paddock this week. I think the biggest rumor was pretty much that Hulkenberg talks with Red Bull have gone silent. There hasn't been anything going there. But yeah, I mean, that's just a rumor. But yeah, so the quick F1 news that I have for you is that the Aero Secrets. This was written by Matt Sommerfield, and that the Turkish Grand Prix actually provided after the race, because the track was new, and it was raining. This mixture of oil from the new track and the wet surface and the rain, pretty much outlined the arrow of the cars, and it created this gray hue that allowed us to kind of see how the aerodynamics work for every single car. And interestingly enough, some of them were very similar, some of them was very different. And one of the greatest differences was that Red Bull kind of creates this really nice swirling flow. I expected that, especially from a car that's designed by Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey was kind of a stickler for making sure that there's no compromise. I remember him being in McLaren when the the body the body that surrounded the engine had to be the thinnest, or pretty much the skinniest. It pretty much had to hug the engine, and that's his philosophy. He wants the engine cover to be as slim as possible, to pretty much just contour around the engine. And we saw that with the gray hue. So yeah, a huge difference also is that Merc, you could see how the airflow is being affected by the halo. I don't know if you saw this, or I don't know if you see this, but Merc actually has this kind of wing attachment to the halo, and they do that because I guess it creates a much nicer airflow. I believe it also goes to the engine intake a little bit much more smoother, and so yeah, that was also interesting. And other than that, Ferrari, they have vertices or vortex, but there was more than so vertices are on the bottom of the car, which was interesting. So pretty much, this article was discussing the idea that the Turkish Grand Prix gave us a solution of how aerodynamicists would see the airflow in a wind tunnel, and so yeah. Other than that, McLaren had the biggest air vertice off of their back wing. It was more pronounced than every other car, and the Williams and Renault barge boards push the airflow downwards instead of around the rear tire. So I thought that was interesting. I think, maybe perhaps it brings up the question of, after the Turkish Grand Prix, do some teams know what other teams are doing when it comes to aerodynamics? So yeah, that was my hot laps.
Well, I will say on this, I did have the chance to watch the Autosport video that covered that.
Right.
And it was really interesting. Now, just to be funny, I will say, if the engineering students on the team that I helped out with saw this, the aero guys would probably get a huge hard on, if you know what I mean. Or some sense of arousal. Sorry to make it a little NSFW there. But but yeah, like, I'll be honest with you, Run It Back Nation, and you, Joy, I don't know much about aero, let alone any kind of engineering. But as I'm learning, yeah, I get to see how different philosophies play into the different cars on the Formula One grid.
Absolutely.
It kind of made me think about our Formula student car and the philosophy that our aero engineer students thought about putting onto the racing car for this season. And yeah, like, in a way, I think some teams can really get an idea of how to make their aero better.
Right.
Of course, I think people are going to end up trying and stealing from Mercedes and Red Bull, right? Now, and it's starting to become and then at that point, it's going to become a copycat competition, much like in the NFL here or in the NBA here. But yeah, no, it was a really interesting video, and yeah, like it just looks so cool to see the mud streaks on the cars. It's just like fascinating. But
It's
yeah, that's just my I guess little tidbit on your hot lap,
yeah,
Joy.
yeah. If it's true, if what you said is true, that a lot of teams are gonna start copying, the Mercedes and the Red Bull. Cyril Beatable and Renault are gonna have to start filling up some protest files a lot soon.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
something. If there was a championship recorded for that, they'd be the outright
it'll
champion,
be
no
the
doubt about
outright
it.
champion. Absolutely. So yeah, you had your F1 news, your hot lap.
I do, and mine is more from a management lens again. And that is Mattia Binotto. So everyone knows that he sat out the Turkish Grand Prix to work on the 2021 contender, and it is announced that he will be sitting out for Bahrain. Now, of course, again, Formula One internet went a little crazy and said, "Oh, maybe no Binotto equals God Vettel." And thinking that maybe the curly-haired guy with the wire glasses is the problem. But I don't want to get too, I guess, political, and I don't want to down the guy because the guy knows a hell of a lot more than me when it comes to Formula One cars or racing in general, for that matter. But it makes me wonder, though. It really does make me wonder. Like, as he's sitting out, I said last week that that means you got to really show up with a world beater next year. I don't care. If
Right.
you're going to take the time, if you're going to do that hard work behind the scenes that most successful people do, or not most, but all successful people do, yeah, you better come with a red car that can fight with the blue car and the silver car. Otherwise, your job is done, my man.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's kind of salt in the wound when you realize the driver that you're letting go actually does the performances that you want out of him without you,
Without you.
which could mess up a little psychologically speaking. But yeah, no, I wonder what that means for Vettel too,
Yeah.
if he is sitting out for the next race, and what it means for Ferrari, and what it means for that 2021 contender.
Well, yeah. I think you hit it right on the head. I think the expectation now is even greater, right, for the next year Ferrari. Um, I do think that Mattia being absent for these two Grand Prix, um, I don't know if it's saying that, like, without him, the Ferraris do better. I think it's going to be a little bit different in Bahrain. I think they're going to struggle a little bit more. Actually, the Ferraris, I think probably like 7 or 8 is probably their best chance. But yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I think now the expectation of that next year Ferrari is even greater. Now I do think that they should be able to. Their target should be Red Bull. I don't. I think Mercedes is a little bit too far ahead to catch up on. Even Red Bull, who didn't take a slack year, is still struggling to beat Mercedes. So yeah, now it's all in Mattia, right? If the car doesn't show up, then what are you doing? You know. Okay, guys. So now let's jump to quick jabs. So this is pretty much the boxing segment of our show. To start off, let's talk about the Kell Brook and Terence Crawford fight. Your reactions, Wes?
Well, for me, it really showed who Terence Crawford really is. That he's one of the best fighters out there, practically the baddest man on the planet, or one of the baddest men on the planet, I should say. Um, he had a very slow start. As a matter of fact, I had Kell Brook up on my scorecard from home last week, but I knew at some point the tides were going to change. All it took was Terence Crawford switching the stance, and as everyone knows, Terence Crawford is probably one of the best two-hand fighters of all time, and one of the more smarter fighters in the game. And all it took was one right hand to the chin, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, I do agree also that we were pretty much watching the fight side by side. I did have Kell Brook winning the first 2 rounds, and I should have known better. I thought that Terence Crawford was a little bit in trouble. He couldn't seem to see to find Kell Brook's jabs, and it made it a little bit more exciting for me, right? Because we had this fight earlier in the year where the champion seemingly kind of is trying to collect data and took too much rounds in the early stages of the fight, and then pretty much lost the entire fight. But I should have known a little bit better. Terence Crawford was a lot better than we thought he was gonna be, and so yeah, pretty much beautiful right hand, right, the counter to his jab, and so yeah, I definitely do believe that Terence Crawford. I'm sorry. I definitely believe that he is not my pound for pound king. I think he's up there though, probably in the top three. I do think that I don't believe that he is the pound for pound king, but I guess reaching the end of the fight, the bigger story was more of the call out, right? And this was when Terence Crawford was alongside his promoter Bob Arum, who they pretty much stated that Terence Crawford wants to fight Pacquiao, and Bob Arum stated that he has sent the pretty much the fight offer to Pacquiao. Now Pacquiao didn't accept it. He didn't decline it. He kind of just ghosted him. And so yeah, I think from there, my opinions is that I think Pacquiao should stay out of this fight. I think Pacquiao is a legendary boxer, and he definitely deserves a lot more. He definitely deserves a lot of respect. But we got to keep in mind here that this is a young man's game, and Pacquiao is no longer a young man. His win against Keith Thurman was impressive. I urge everyone to revisit the Keith Thurman fight. It was a lot more closer than a lot of people thought. I do believe that Pacquiao won the majority of the rounds, but I don't think he won every round convincingly. And that's the thing. There was moments in that fight where Pacquiao, I believe, either didn't see the punches coming, or even worse, he saw the punches coming and he wasn't fast enough to react to it. Which means that his body is betraying him. He can see the punches. He's probably one of the most experienced boxers out there right now. I'm pretty sure he could see a lot of the punches that are coming. He just doesn't have the quickness anymore, the reflexes to react to them, and I think that's a dangerous flaw. Right? I'm not saying that he developed this flaw. I'm saying he's 43 years old, right? He's bound to miss some stuff in his career, and yeah, that's pretty much it. On my side, I'm glad that we have differing opinions of this one, Wes. But yeah, I think if Crawford fights Pacquiao, I think Crawford demolishes Pacquiao.
Well, I will give a two-part response.
Okay.
Because there has been a lot of revision from when we originally talked about this off the air to tonight. And, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Manny Pacquiao is on my Mount Rushmore of athletes, right? And I have that belief that he's capable of beating the other welterweight champions. So, like Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. But here's the curveball I'm going to throw at you, Joy. I'm going to reuse the word need. So in our F1 discussion, I talked about how I said, I feel like it's in a position where Formula One needs Lewis, but Lewis doesn't need Formula One, right? And that was the hot take that I had in that discussion.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if you ask me, looking at it again from a management lens, Terence Bud Crawford, who's already in his early 30s, needs Manny Pacquiao, but Manny Pacquiao does not need him. So, what I think Manny could pull it off, yes, but do I think it's going to happen? No. And if you ask me, there's going to be a lot of people to blame. particularly on Terrence's side, not Manny's, because Manny's smarter than that. Manny knows what is best for him, and Terrence knows what's best for him too. Don't get me wrong, but of course, if you're trying to make a sensible matchup, this is not it.
Yeah.
But of course, if we're gonna play the fantasy game, I think Manny wins. Not convincingly, but it's a win.
Okay. Okay. I could respect that. I do think Pacquiao still has a lot of gas left in the tank. We kind of spoke on this. It was kind of a pre-prod, but Manny could be pretty much best suited, going down a little bit lower in weight, right? I think he could be a little bit more competitive in those weight classes. He doesn't have to. I mean, he's still gonna take. I mean, I'm not saying like the lower weight classes don't punch as hard, but I'm saying he may be able to react a little bit faster to a lot, or a little bit better to a lot of the punches that he's gonna take in that weight class. And so yeah. Was there any more that you wanted to share?
Well, I also do want to add that that could work because one, Manny Pacquiao, he actually most fighters struggle to come down in weight to fight.
Right.
Manny actually struggles to come up, which is the funny part because he
Right.
walks around in the 130s, 140s, something like that.
Which is, I guess that's a good problem to have when in the sport of boxing.
Maybe,
Right.
of course, we would never know because we never fought in boxing ourselves.
Right.
But I mean, it would make it sound sensible to fight in your natural weight.
Right. Absolutely.
But I also will add that chances are, as he goes down in weight, or if he were to come back down in weight, the guys could actually be faster.
Yeah, I agree as well.
But of course, again, we just have a recurring theme of ageless wonders. So whatever happens, happens. But if you ask me, I think Terence is better off looking for Spence rather than Manny Pacquiao. Because if I'm Manny, I'm just sitting there in my congressional or senatorial office saying like, I don't need you, dude. You and your heavy set promoter. I don't need either one of you. Basically.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Errol Spence versus Crawford is the fight to see. Now we have to first get through Errol Spence versus Garcia, right? Which is coming up in the future. More on that later on the podcast. Well, yeah. Also, did you want to add any more?
For Bud and Kell Brook? No, I am good there.
Okay, perfect. And so we could move on to, well, I guess we could move back because this was an undercard. The Maloney versus the Franco fight. It was ruled a no contest because of a controversial, pretty much, it was an accidental headbutt, wasn't it?
That's what they ruled it, but if you ask me, there was no accidental headbutt. I mean, there was a clash head, but it was on the wrong side of the head.
Right.
If anything, Andrew Maloney, or I forgot which Maloney came out there because there's twins and they both compete in the same place at the same time. But Maloney, he just had it going.
Right.
I mean, Franco, for whatever reason, could not defend. It was punches going to his right eye. And to me, it should have been a TKO victory for Maloney rather than a no contest. Like, I don't know what those referees were seeing. Like that instant replay in boxing. Instant replay is supposed to help sports. In that case, it hurt it.
Yeah.
And if you ask me, that's going to be a big PR disaster, or it probably is already a big PR disaster for, not as much Top Rank, but the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
Yeah, I agree. I think when boxing, when politics enters boxing, that's when you start to get the phrases of like, this is killing boxing, or this is why boxing is dead. And like, yeah, there are always going to be decisions like this. I think we've, cheering for Pacquiao as kids, we've received the bad end of those controversies, and so. Yeah, I think it's just part of boxing. At this moment, it's part of the DNA of boxing. It is kind of sad though because, these boxers, they pretty much sacrifice months of training to get ready, and then only for it to be taken away from them. And so yeah, like I said, like politics and boxing don't really. Well, obviously they will work hand in hand, but as a fan, it does. It's very bitter to watch, So, was there any more that you want to share on Maloney Franco?
No, that is it. That was
Okay.
just a disaster of a
Yeah.
officiating job, and of
Yep.
course we're gonna see it multiple times throughout the
Do you remember who
years. But
the referee for the fight was?
I do not enjoy and I do not care. All I know is that it was a bad call.
Yeah. Okay. Because I remember Lawrence Cole was officiating a fight. I think it was the Terence Bud and the Kell Brook fight. But yeah. Cool. So let's move on to Tyson Fury fight off the table.
That is right. So Fury tweeted earlier in the week um, that he will be fighting in 2021. So he was supposed to, or he was rumored to fight in December. I believe it was on the 5th against Agit Kabayel, but I guess something happened there. And yeah, so not much to report on other than, it's going to take us a little bit longer to see the Gypsy King go back to the ring. And yeah, whatever it may be it COVID concerns or personal matters. If that is the case, I hope everything is okay. But either way, it just builds up more excitement to see the Gypsy King back in the ring again.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is true, Wes. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing Bob Arum was waiting for the outcome of the AJ fight.
That I don't know, but
Okay.
I do know that Eddie Hearn on the other side is running his mouth, saying that, oh, well, if AJ can get through Pulev, well then, Gypsy, you either get in with us, or we're just gonna go on our boxing lives without you.
Right.
That's what I've heard. But in terms of Bob Arum, I already insulted him earlier in the podcast. I don't want to do it again.
I was about to
So
say, speaking of Bob Arum, here's the Tyson Fury fight off the table. But yeah, it seems as though they're leaning towards either the trilogy, the end of the trilogy against Deontay Wilder, or a fight with AJ. Real quick, who would you rather see?
in general,
Yeah,
or like for Gypsy King.
no, for Gypsy King.
Oh, I'd rather see him fight AJ.
Okay, cool. I guess I'm on the band where I'd rather see the finale of the trilogy. Just because I mean, I love Deontay Wilder, but maybe perhaps I've watched too much of his fights where it has gone the other way just because of his power, and he wasn't necessarily winning any rounds, just like when he was against King Kong. So not King Kong, but Luis Ortiz. So, but yeah. Let's move on to
Well, one
yeah.
more thing. I do want to counter argue that, let's say Wilder did pull it off, then it's going to be like the heavyweight version of Pacquiao Marquez. It's just never going to end.
It's never gonna end.
And then AJ can just go walking off into the sunset, being like, "Haha, guys, keep going.
I guess
I'm just
this
going to keep doing my thing."
I guess this is my hot take. Pacquiao
Okay.
Marquez. Pacquiao Marquez 5. I'm just playing. That's the
Uh,
fight I want to see. Pacquiao Marquez 5.
well, if
45-year-olds.
if that's the case, I really think
That's my
I
hot
really
take.
I really think MP takes that one. No doubt about
Okay,
it.
yeah. I think so too. I think yeah, he got him hurt in the last fight. Marquez just caught him. But yeah, anyway, upcoming fights. Let's move on to Canelo versus Callum Smith.
Yes, sir. They have just announced the venue for that, and they will be going to Texas. They're going to be going down to the 210 San Antonio Alamo
Hey.
Dome. So for my San Antonio peeps, you got a big sporting event coming to your town. My pound for pound fighter is coming to your town.
I
Canelo Alvarez,
I
baby.
agree. I agree. I
And
think Canelo is number one.
yeah, and I believe that is the 19th of December.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting pre-Christmas for South Texas. I know that the whole atmosphere is going to be for Canelo Alvarez, and I think he will win.
No,
No doubt about it.
I believe we also spoke about this, Wes, in the second episode. But is Canelo still doing that one-off with the Zone
Yes,
for this
yes. The
fight? Okay.
zone, the zone and match room will be around for this matchup, as far as I know.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. So, I'm probably still gonna have to watch a bootleg version, but that that's another topic for another day.
Oh no, come over to my house, man. I got you.
Okay. Decent. I'll take that invite. But yeah, let's move on to Spence versus Garcia.
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is one I was telling you I'm excited, right? Because I've been watching Danny Garcia for a long time. Not really for a long time, but I became a huge fan of him when I was just watching through his previous fights. And so, right, like this bout has a lot of implications in it, right? If Spence wins, then there's probably a much better chance of fighting Terence Crawford, right? We've always kind of said that it's almost impossible for Spence and Crawford to fight each other. You know, it was kind of like that. It's very similar to that discussion between Pacquiao versus Mayweather, but I think if Spence wins this fight, I think it's a little bit more easier, a little bit more clear that they should fight next. Now, on the other side, I think Garcia, he's. I'm not saying he's on a losing streak, but he's definitely losing a lot of credibility, I guess, in the welterweight division. I always thought that Garcia and Thurman was going to take over the welterweight division. I was wrong. But yeah, I'm really pulling for Garcia on this one. Because I told you I became a huge fan of him. I think he's a good boxer. He's an underrated boxer. And just because, he's lost against Thurman and Sean Porter, I don't think that takes away any of his credibility. Those are great champions. And so yeah, I think this is I don't think this is an end all be all for Garcia, but I do think that if he loses this fight, he will kind of lose a little bit more credibility in that welterweight division, and I don't think he could challenge for another title if he loses against Spence.
Sure. My take on Swift is that yeah, he's a bit on the fringe, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And of course, having a dad, awesome trainer that's going to support you and always talk crap, and that's the nice way. That's a nice way to put it. It's not always gonna be your fuel to go out there and win every single fight, right? That can only get you so far.
Right.
But for me, I've always thought Errol Spence was the future of the welterweight division. Okay. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting how he fights after that stupid car accident. It's like, yeah, I'm glad that he's okay. I'm glad that he recovered fine. But at the same time, you got to learn how to be careful because life is very fragile. not to get very philosophical there, but anyway, yeah,
I wanted to ask you a question
sure.
real quick.
Yeah.
Now I've only seen Spence fight against Sean Porter.
Mm-hmm.
That was the time when Sean Porter was a welterweight champion. He was defending it against Errol Spence. And I guess I can't remember off the top of my head. Errol Spence is a southpaw.
That is correct.
Okay, cool. So it'll be interesting to see because I don't believe Terence Bud Crawford has fought a southpaw in a while.
Well, there you go, right?
Right.
That's the interesting part. And of course, the other guy that he wants is a southpaw as well.
Right.
So, and yeah, no, I mean, for me, Errol Spence, I think, will have some type of difficulty fighting Danny Garcia.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think he'll pull it out.
Okay.
He's just too talented to lose this one.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
Yeah.
And it's in his second home, if you will, or yeah.
Yeah.
Or his home for the moment, Dallas. And I love me some Dallas. So Dallas, what up?
Hey.
And what really set it off for me was Angel Garcia saying that they're gonna take a squat on the Cowboys logo.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just like, all right, that's it, man. I don't care about. The only thing that Philly has ever created was Adonis Creed and Rocky Balboa, okay, and Allen Iverson. Other than that, nah, man. Just for that, I want Spence to come out of there, pull the W, unify those belts with Bud, and then we'll see who the top dog is in the welterweight division.
I don't know about you, but I enjoy some Philly cheesesteak. So, but yeah, I do agree. I think Spence is gonna pull out unanimous decision. Now, this is not my official prediction. I still need to study a little bit more of Spence and a little bit more Garcia. I am like just on a hunch. I do kind of want to say I'm pulling for Garcia to win. Like I want to see him win because I think he is an underrated boxer. But I think I'm going with you on this one. I think I'll trust you even though I haven't seen much of Spence, it does seem like he's, from what I've seen against Sean Porter, um, I don't even think I'm qualified to say if Spence. I couldn't even remember if the guy was a southpaw or orthodox. But yeah, I'll probably take your word on it. I will do my research, and probably next week I will see if I have a much better prediction, a much better analysis.
Well, if you want to have a reference point, Joy, besides watching the Sean Porter unification fight, you should also watch when he fought Mikey Garcia.
Mikey Garcia, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that goes to show what he can do when he's at his best. Errol Spence Jr.
Definitely, and I guess this is a huge reference point, right? This upcoming fight, to see if he can stand toe to toe with Terence Bud. So we'll see.
For sure.
And so yeah, let's move on to Tyson versus Jones. It still boggles the mind. It still baffles me that we're even talking about a fight like this in 2020.
That's 2020 for you. I mean, well, what else do you want me to tell you on that in that regard, Joy?
I mean, like I probably would have saw this fight going on maybe in the early 2000s when they were still both fighting. They're still kind of active, especially when Jones was pretty much at his prime, at his peak, right? When he was climbing up all the way to the heavyweights, and then Antonio Tarver put him in his place. But that's another topic for another day. But yeah, remind me again when this fight is.
It is, I believe, on the 28th, so right
28th.
after Black Friday.
Black Friday. Okay. Oh, okay, November. I will say, right, I think we've spoke about this in Run It Back episode 2. Come check us out. I said you and I agreed that Jones is going to win this fight. Correct me if I'm mistaken.
No, I went with Mike Tyson.
Oh, okay, you went with Mike. Okay, so, I mean, I guess, yeah, I think Jones will still pull it off. I think he's just fought more recent. I think he's going to be a little bit in better shape. We did see the recent image of Mike Tyson, and it's crazy. Like, people are saying like, oh, he looks great, he looks phenomenal. He looks great, he looks phenomenal for a 50-year-old, but I don't know. Like he does look like he has a lot of muscle, but we'll see, right? Like I said, we'll see come round 3, round 4. Mike Tyson isn't like a Terence Bud Crawford. He isn't like a Lomachenko where he collects data in the first couple rounds and then finishes you off in the third or fourth. He's not that kind of fighter, and so if Tyson can't take out Jones in the first couple rounds, I don't think this fight is gonna come his way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. It'll be a real doozy, if you ask me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, this is going to be the most polarizing fight I've seen since Shaquille O'Neal versus Shane Mosley. And yeah, it's going to be weird, but I'm excited to see what unfolds there.
It's funny because ever since Rocky 5 came out, like, I never would have thought that we were gonna be in this situation where, older fighters that, have pretty much left their prime, like in the 90s or early 2000s, were ever gonna fight 10 years later.
Hey! Although that scenario is fictional, Sly almost beat Tarver.
Okay, yeah, okay. I guess.
So don't forget that.
The Mason the Lion Dixon.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I mean, I guess I'll definitely eat my words. I mean, the greatest example is George Foreman, right?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I guess that proves me wrong, right? Maybe I just live in this fictional world where I don't like to see guys that are retired get beaten up, especially in a sport that has you pretty much punch the other guy's face. But I don't know. There's probably there's probably another topic of conversation for another day. But yeah, and to round it off, we have the Garcia versus Campbell. It is postponed to Wes.
It's postponed, but as of today, Ryan G put out a post saying that they will be fighting on January 2nd. So, way to
Okay.
welcome the new year with
Hey.
a big boxing match.
Yeah.
According to Garcia, the venue is unannounced, but he says he's ready. And of course, everyone knows his internet influence. And yeah, I'm excited to see how he does against Luke Campbell. And yeah, I hope at that point everything's all square with the Campbell camp and the coronavirus. Again, speedy recovery.
Yeah.
Wish you well, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, we gotta wait for the Ryan G train, but that's okay. I think it's worth the wait.
All right. All right. Decent. Decent. Because yeah, I just want to share the same thoughts. Like I hope Campbell has a speedy recovery. And I'm glad that they're able to pretty much push this fight, postpone it. Um, it's gonna be tough. I thought we shared this in a couple episodes ago where we thought it's gonna be cruel to Campbell to have him fight after quarantining. You know, I don't even think at that point we thought that the fight was gonna go on. I thought Garcia was gonna move on and look for another fight, which would have been cruel for Campbell as well. But yeah, any more thoughts on Garcia or Campbell?
I do not.
Should we share our early predictions?
We can.
Okay,
I think Ryan G pulls it out in
ooh,
on points.
on points. Okay,
Yes.
I don't think he's had those in a while
Well, now would be a good time to test that out,
to
wouldn't
test
it?
that out. Right, right. So, I mean, like I said before, right? Campbell has been in wars against Linares and Lomachenko, and so with that, I think Campbell is gonna take this. I'm pulling for Campbell. I think it's gonna be close. Probably we're gonna see how Ryan Garcia is built. Right.
I just want to see that athleticism in over the course of 36 minutes, man. That's all. That's why I say on points.
Right. Right. So yeah. Yeah. We're gonna. This is definitely a fight that we're gonna learn a lot more about Ryan Garcia. I think this is the first time he will get tested. This is the biggest test he's ever gotten so far in his young boxing career. And if anything, this is for Campbell and Campbell's side. This is his way of getting a title fight again, a challenge.
That's right. I mean, there's going to be a lot of implications on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. And any closing remarks, Wes?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for listening to this week's episode of the Run It Back podcast. Well, we love you guys. So, come on by, share your thoughts, spread the word, show some love, and stay safe.
All right, Running Back Nation. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next week. We will be covering the preview of the Bahrain Grand Prix, the very first Bahrain Grand Prix this year, because there's going to be two.